I'd rather create something that others criticize than create nothing and criticize others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures. It's about who those figures are.
The Hospopreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 85 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. James Sackl first became known for an online business directory he founded called Young Melbourne, a website targeting a Gen Y audience who were offered a curated list of goods and services. 6 years later, that business was acquired and he felt unfulfilled. So he set out to solve a problem that affected everyone. In 2017, James founded Karma 3, a biotech business with a vision to transform agriculture by developing technology that enables efficient nutrient recycling of waste using insects. On the 16th of October 2019, I interviewed James, and on the 18th of November, a Sydney Morning Herald article came out that may compromise his integrity and consequently this episode. I've linked the article in the show notes. The piece revolves around an open fraud case against James in relation to his work prior to Karma 3. So the interview ahead is before any public knowledge of that case, and the statements, views and opinions that we express are in no way reflective of an opinion in support or opposition of said case. I will leave any position on that unrelated matter up to you. I have no obligation to disclose or withhold the interview, but given James's support of the program, I've chosen to release it and not penalise Karma 3. Given the shadow cast by James's departure from the business, I believe our attention should be brought back to the good work of the company instead. There are many lessons contained ahead, and I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to the show, James.
Hey, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. A pleasure to have another James on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. It is a good name.
Anytime. The best name, in fact, I like to think.
I've thought the same thing.
Yeah, funny that. James, the first question, as you know, that I like to ask is, what is your crazy hospitality story?
That's a hard one. I would say the most recent one is I was at a restaurant with my wife. It's a Chinese restaurant, actually, and she is Chinese. And we were initially the first people in there. So we sat down and ordered from the menu, and then more and more guests started arriving, and I think they were all Caucasian guests. And our waitress suddenly became really, really rude towards us. And she started, when she'd bring our food out, she sort of slamming dishes down. They were the wrong dishes. And she was, I don't know, like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type personality where she was super nice to the other tables and kept sort of avoiding us. It was a bizarre situation.
Wow. I have heard this to be a thing. I don't want to open it up too much, but did you come to any sort of solution around why that might have been?
I don't know. Maybe it was like reverse racism. I don't know. It was a bizarre thing, but we ended up ordering, I think it was 5 dishes, and we ate 5 different dishes that evening. It was just a bizarre scene. It ended up being like 12 tables in the restaurant. So
this is a terrible hospitality experience.
It was a funny one, yeah. Needless to say, we haven't been back.
Let's take it on another tangent. Do you have another story that jumps out as something that was obviously strange in that one?
Yeah.
Is there something that jumps out to you as a great hospitality experience?
Right. Yeah, I was a tourist overseas, and effectively it was my first night. I think it was in a Munich brauhaus. It was almost closing time, and ended up having a beer and making a new friend, and she was one of the waitresses there, and I ended up staying with her for about a week. So that was a pretty good hospitality experience.
Love that.
Yeah.
It's so easy to make friends in venues, right?
Indeed, yeah.
James, the next question I like to ask is why you do what you do.
So I came to the realization sort of even just before selling my first business that there was going to be a melding of social enterprise and corporate pursuit. Shortly after I sold my first business, I was on the lookout for a business that sort of fit that mold. So the reason why we do what we do today is really in the pursuit of a better future. We're a business at the end of the day. We need to make money. We need to obviously get returns for our shareholders. But by the same token, and probably equally as important, is we need to be doing something that's beneficial holistically for the world.
Fantastic answer.
Yep.
But there are a couple of things I pull out of that.
Yep.
One is that you sold your first business,
Yep.
so we're going to get into that in a minute.
Sure.
But on that answer of yours, you mentioned it's the pursuit of a better future.
Yep.
The pursuit in particular of something specific, or is that a very broad definition?
I think it's a fairly broad definition. So I think if you're going to embark on something, you ought to be embarking on it to go in the right direction. I don't think you should necessarily do something to be inherently bad. You need to have the right intentions in mind.
How do you know that it's the right direction, even if you have the right intentions?
Well, you come at it from the perspective of there's a problem. I think all good businesses are born from solutions to problems hopefully a lot of people face. So by definition of solving a problem, you are taking a step in the right direction. unless, it's an evil problem, not enough ivory in the world or something like that.
I'm not suggesting that you're solving an evil problem, but I just want to pose the question in a more philosophical sense.
Yes.
That people might pursue solutions to problems that they see, but what makes it the direction that society ought to evolve into or towards?
Well, I think probably the answer to that would lie in how big your market actually is. I think if enough people are experiencing the problem, you dare say it is a problem worth solving and worth creating a business for. As you come up with ideas for businesses, it really is out of your own personal frustrations, and nobody likes living in a world full of smog or full of trash or anything like that. So it's kind of a bit of gut feel, a bit of market smarts.
People think differently about answering these sorts of questions in the world, and for business, they take a bottom-up approach or a top-down approach. One is that day-to-day, what are these sort of problems that they're facing? Let's find some solutions for those problems. And the other direction is, what direction do they want to see society evolve into? How can we create something that then we're going to move towards? How do you solve those problems?
You've got to have a vision for the future that's positive. And that's what we try to have, in every avenue that we pursue, that we really are pursuing a vision for a better future. So in terms of how we solve those problems, it really is through an iterative process. We know what the end goal should look like. How to get there though, that's the fun part. It's never a straight line. You're bouncing around, you're sometimes going backwards, but that's really the motivating factor, is the fact that you've still got this horizon that you're going toward, and you really need to look at ways to get there as quickly as possible.
How are you working towards that better future?
Okay, so that is a very broad question. I think probably the way that we're doing it really comes down to looking at problems that have an impact both on people and on the environment, not specifically in that order, and really pushing forward for a catch-all type solution.
What does that catch-all type solution look like, and have you found it?
Yeah, I think we have. So it's basically one that would be replicable around the world, and something that's really got fairly far-reaching impact.
What does that look like?
So the business that I founded just on 3 years ago now was designed actually to tackle one of the, it's more coming to the spotlight now, but certainly a pressing environmental issue, and that's got to do with the issue around food waste. And our novel solution to tackling food waste actually involves the art of mass rearing insects. So the business is called Karma, and we've developed technology to be able to mass rear insects anywhere in the world, and we do so solely off of prepared food waste. So we're essentially diverting food waste from landfill and stopping it from breaking down and releasing greenhouse gases. And by the same token, we're recycling nutrients via our insects that then go towards alternative protein sources, and also actually turn part of the process into an organic fertilizer. So we're restoring nutrients to soils that are depleted as well.
Yes. So that's not just a 3-year journey. There's more that's behind the scenes there. Before we get more into the products that you guys have developed now, and then what solutions they are going to end up offering, what about your first business?
So it was a business that didn't necessarily solve big world issues. It started out as a yellow pages online. It was called Young Media. And the idea was that we would attract Generation Y or millennial consumers to businesses. That was the initial pitch to businesses, and didn't have any money when I first started. So what I did was went around to all the cool businesses that I knew, and I hit the pavement and went door to door and sold ad space on a site that hadn't been built yet. And that's how it started. Our initial sort of reach or audience was fairly limited. It's all well and good to go and find businesses when you needed it, but there was no real attraction to come back to the site. So we started to toy with the ability for businesses to offer vouchers. So they'd upload a discount. Users of the site could actually download a voucher and take it into store, and the store owner would realize their return on investment by advertising on Young Media. And that got us a lot more traction. And then what we started to do was offer a referral type system. So you're downloading a voucher. If you go and refer it to 10 friends and they all download it, the value of your voucher increased by a certain amount. So it sort of had a virality to it. And in 2012 it was sold, and that was where I sort of had my slight crisis in 2011, saying,
at 19.
Yeah, I was having an issue of selling ad space online is all well and good, but what are we doing, man? What problems are we solving? Yeah, I kind of got disheartened, even though we're making quite a bit of money at that stage.
How did that happen as well? Were you approached, or did you actively try to sell it? How did that work?
No, so we got actually approached in the same week by 2 different parties, one from overseas and one from Sydney, and ended up the one from overseas won out. But I stayed on for 6 months and then it was handed over. Yeah, that was a pretty good experience.
In terms of that experience For people who maybe are going through the same thing at the moment, they've been approached by someone to deal with that sort of negotiation. Do you have anything that you'd like to share with them?
Yes, never seem too eager. With any deals, whether you're selling a business or trying to convince someone to do something, never seem too eager. It's always good to keep a level head, and pressure tactics don't really work.
So you ended up selling the business.
Yes.
You worked in it for 6 months.
Yes.
And then finished out the deal. You were obviously lost. You didn't know what you were going to do, did you?
It was. There were a lot of ideas around that I ended up splashing out on some bars and some restaurants, actually.
Are you still involved with it?
No, I'm not.
Why not in the retail end?
Whilst the attraction's there, I think where I suppose you can call it a passion, it really is in designing the systems that help run things. So in Karma's case, we've effectively engineered a system using an insect as a medium and designed the software behind it and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's the back of house stuff that really excites me.
How did you find you were more interested in that after going through the hospitality front end or retail end?
So it was really a case of trying front of house, trying back of house. I preferred back of house.
So the work you were doing behind the scenes obviously led you up the supply chain.
Yes.
How did that happen?
So the idea for Karma actually came about from, it's actually another investment that I made to see whether I could turn cattle farming green, turn cows green in particular. And
not the colour.
We tried, it didn't work. Yeah, so it was effectively a cattle station in South Australia, and we toyed with ways that we could reduce the methane emissions from rearing those cattle, but also from waste that came off the farm. And part of the solution to the waste, I thought, would be insects, because you see examples of it in the paddock. At the same time, I bought the farm, still had the restaurants and that sort of thing, and realised that I just liked designing stuff a lot better. It's certainly more scalable, certainly was in my eyes. But at the same token, now that we're at this stage in Karma's evolution, we are getting now towards more of a retail type solution. So we've engineered the back end, and now we're on our way to a direct-to-consumer couple of products.
Fantastic. You want to share a little bit about those?
Yeah, sure.
Wasn't sure if you were going to say that they're coming out soon.
Well, they're already out.
They're out?
Yeah. We moved our timeline quite a fair way forward. So Karma, as I said before, we take in food waste. We offer basically a sustainable collection service. So we take food waste from major supermarkets, we take food waste from Melbourne markets. We've signed a deal with Nando's where we take their waste. We basically take it back to our facility, we process it, we create a homogeneous feed for our insects, and then it basically goes to the workhorses where they consume it and turn it into body mass exceptionally efficiently. Once the insects are grown, we then harvest them and we turn what's now a carbon positive protein, which basically means in the process it sequesters carbon, into a sustainable dog food and dog treat. And the name of it's called One With Everything. I don't know whether you've heard the joke about the Buddhist monk in New York. I'll tell it for the audience. So there's a Buddhist monk in New York, and he walks past a hot dog stand and walks back and looks at the menu. After a little while, he asks the hot dog vendor, "Can you make me one with everything?"
Love that.
That's the joke.
I do like that one.
The second part of that joke is, I said, that'll be $4. So he hands him a $10 note, waits there awkwardly for his change to come back, and the hot dog vendor says, change comes from within.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's where the name for the dog food and the dog treats came from.
This is the one that I tried at Global Table.
Yes, you tried actually whole larvae. They actually go through further processing. They end up looking like Oreos. That's now being sold through various health food stores and pet food stores around Victoria.
What do you see as the future of insect farming?
Look, the future of insect farming, in our opinion, it will get to a point where it is supplementing in the human food chain. So we believe probably initially it won't go towards feeding people, but it will go towards feeding the animals that people do eat. It's a much more sustainable protein source than the soy meal or the fish meal that's currently used. But in order to do that, you need to have achieved fairly good economies of scale, and you need the actual process to have scaled up quite considerably. And this is the reason why we made the decision to go towards the pet food market. The other product that we actually produce is an organic fertilizer that comes out the other end of our insects.
How does the manufacturing system of this sort of food differ to something that people would buy off the shelf at a supermarket?
Let's take chickens for an example. The way the chicken market is segmented is there are people that produce eggs, there are people that produce broilers, and the whole sort of supply chain is segmented. The opportunity that presents itself with insects really is that you can do all in one in very close proximity. They don't require a lot of space to be grown, they don't require a whole heap of resources to grow them, and they are exceptionally efficient at converting feed into body mass. So this is why out of the one factory we're able to effectively process waste, we're able to produce protein, and we're able to process that protein into products that you would buy every day. Whereas in the poultry industry, that's all segmented. The point of differentiation is the ability for you to do a lot with a lot less.
So what does that actually look like? For people who haven't seen what an insect farm looks like,
Yes.
can you describe what sort of scale we're looking at for your operation?
Yeah, sure. Our first factory is about 1,500 square meters in size. And if you walk in, you see a whole heap of shiny equipment. You don't see any insects. They're really the cogs within the system. They make it work. That's why I describe Karma as an engineering company, because we're effectively a hardcore engineering company that's decided to optimize and use that as a fuel source for our process, and that's insects. Yeah, you'd see machinery, you'd see a few staff. The first factory is sort of our blueprint factory design that we can then scale around Australia and indeed around the world. So we're capable of going through 1,200 tonne a year of food waste per site and producing about 300 tonne a year of dog food and 300 tonne a year of fertiliser.
Just from the one site?
Just from the one site, yeah.
Wow.
And as these sites roll out, they'll get progressively darker. So what that means is that the automation level will go up, cost of production will go down.
Economies of scale.
Indeed.
Love that. The economist in me absolutely loves that.
Sure he does.
Oh yes. What does success then look like to you in that sort of market?
So I spoke before about having a positive impact in pursuit of a better future. We currently waste a third of all the food that we produce globally. It's nuts. If you likened it to something that people can relate to, it's like having your breakfast, having your lunch, and then when it comes time to dinner, piling your plate up high and tipping it all in the bin. And the whole world does that every day. That's just crazy. So in our opinion, we could actually curb that 1/3 to a lot less in that we're diverting nutrients. So the positive future would look like it would be a crime to throw away or to have food waste. It's like when you throw a plastic bottle out the window these days, people report you to the EPA. 20 years ago, they didn't do that. 20 years time, or probably less, they're going to be pissed at you for throwing a banana peel out the window.
Are you suggesting that policy decisions should be
Absolutely.
made in favour of that?
Absolutely, yeah. In the US, it's already happening. They're banning food waste from landfill. So there are alternative technologies, but they don't recycle it into usable nutrients. They basically put it down to low-grade fertilizer. Whereas using an organism, they can eat it, they grow up big and strong, and their bodies are fairly nutritious. So you'd insert them into the food chain.
I'd like to know, James, what are you learning about right now?
Right now, I'm learning about extrusion technology. Like I said, we're hardcore engineering down at Karma, so the guys, including myself, we don't know how to do something, we figure it out. So at the moment, because we're about to start producing dog food, it needs to be extruded. So the opportunities and the perils that lie with extrusion technology. There's also rendering. So rendering is going to be a thing, not now, but in the future. So I'm also studying rendering.
So what does that mean for people who don't know what extrusion or rendering are?
So extrusion basically is the process of high pressure and basically turning something into a shape under high pressure. So it's the way that dog food or any sort of pelletized food are kept together. That's when you see those little bone-shaped pellets in your dog food. It's gone through an extrusion process. So it creates heat, heaps of pressure, and a very hard die-cast mold. But depending on the ingredient source that you're using and how it operates under certain temperatures, they will behave differently. An insect protein is not something that's been heavily studied.
So you're doing your own R&D in the process?
Absolutely.
Is that costly to do?
Yeah, up until now, we've been entirely R&D. There's no manual on how to breed insects. There's no manual on what you should feed them. So it really, the last 3 years has been trial and error.
So now
Yes.
where are you seeing R&D in insect protein technology?
Yep. So we are diverting more and more efforts towards sales and marketing. So we've got our processes down pat. We know what we don't know, which is really important. So now we're sort of making sure that we can sell the products that we're able to produce. They've got amazing benefits, so people should be able to buy them. The further R&D that will happen in the insect space will be in genetics. So ensuring you've got optimal genetics, something that we've done since almost day one. There'll also be further process optimizations, software enhancements. There'll be tweaks to microclimates, that sort of thing. And potentially also more of a control in terms of what your inputs are versus what your outputs need to be. So it's basically you feed them this at this stage in their life, it results in more, whatever you're going for, whatever trait you're wanting.
Yes. I want to pull out one of those things because there are a lot of elements to that answer. One of them was about the genetics of the insect. Is it easier to map the genetics of an insect?
We haven't actually tried. What we've really done is we've gone through a process of mechanical separation. So it's basically desirable trait separation. So every generation that goes through and is allowed through to breeding, we only put back into our system 5% of the population for rebreeding. So 95% go to product. But that 5%, they're basically the creme de la creme. They go through the biggest and the fastest and the strongest for the shortest period of time.
So what sort of attributes are you looking for in an insect?
So you're looking for resilience. So basically, we want to be able to take any organic waste stream there is, blend it up, feed it to them, and we don't want them to be too fussy. We want them to be able to grow off the least amount of nutrients possible. So realistically, you're looking for the biggest over the shortest period of time. That's basically the primary metric that you're looking for.
If we extrapolate that, in that trajectory, does it look like there could potentially be consequences for people who look at animal rights? Would there be insect rights? Could that be?
I mean, there's robot rights. Don't see why there wouldn't be insect rights.
Have you had any backlash from anybody about that sort of concept yet? Because it's super early stage of this sort of development, this industry. But
they're all busy with the abattoirs.
We joke about that, but
yeah, look,
that could be a thing.
It certainly will be a thing. So insects are sentient. They have different nervous systems to us, but indeed have nervous systems. So the way you treat them needs to be ethical. The way you euthanize them needs to be ethical.
I think it could be a fascinating conversation about the stage of development of the industry and then when you get people who oppose the development of that industry.
Well, it's very interesting you say that because a lot of vegans buy our product because it's a meat alternative. Whilst it's still a meat, it's a meat alternative. So we had a Vice journalist who was a strict vegan live off of our insects for a week. Look, she's a vegan for various reasons, one of them being environmental reasons. And while she didn't like living off insects for a week, that was the next best alternative protein source. We find a lot of vegan or vegetarian pet owners who have been advised by their vets not to feed their dog, cat for that matter, an entirely vegan or vegetarian diet. What are you going to choose? Something that's made out of a lamb or a cow, or something that's made out of an insect? It's an interesting space. Very, very interesting, in fact.
And I guess based on the development of the industry at this time, we can only really speculate.
Indeed.
But I'm interested to listen back to this conversation and hear what we said.
Yeah.
James, we've touched a bit on innovative techniques and innovations, but I want to just ask one more question on that around what you're seeing that's innovating right now in the not just insect space, but around food manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, the go-tos really are the alternative protein space, alternative meats. Beyond is impossible. It really is, I think, a response to increased consumer awareness. And I mean, probably the coolest thing that I've seen recently is actually utilizing microbes and renewable energy to create protein. So there's a firm in Denmark that literally use solar power to create electricity and microbes to basically feed off of that electricity and turn it into, they produce protein. Whilst it's exceedingly inefficient at the moment, I'm sure that efficiency gains will be made. But that's certainly something very, very cool. And it's something that we had in mind very early on at Karma.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I want to take a different road and ask a little bit more about creativity. You're obviously a very lateral thinker and creative mind. So I'm interested to know how you get into a state that really fosters that creativity.
I mean, like every day, I have a shower. I stay too long in the shower, but it just seems to be my flow zone. You know, I get into my flow state and I have wacky ideas that even when I step out don't make a lot of sense, but an idea sticks. It's really something that you know it's going to be something that is probably worthwhile pursuing.
Those hashtag shower thoughts.
Yes. Try to write it on the glass, but got to turn the hot water on again to see.
I'm the same, actually. Get it all in the shower.
Yeah.
Without being crude, it's the bathroom, it's the shower and the toilet.
Yeah, absolutely.
James, I'd like to know what your biggest challenge is right now.
So my ambitions are fairly high, and wanting to get there as soon as possible is super tempting. But what I've really got to temper that with is making sure that we're growing with quality, making sure we're doing the right things now to sustain us into the future. So that's tough.
So how are you going about doing that?
I'll give you an example. So very, very early on in Karma's history, we were approached by one of the largest aquafeed producers in the world to sign a deal with them where we'd provide them with alternative protein. We signed it. That was the trajectory that we were going on. But when you looked at the requirement in order to fulfill that contract, we would have probably gone broke trying. So doing what's right by the business was reimagining where our products might fit into the market and not doing what everybody else in the insect space is doing. It's literally thinking laterally and behaving almost like a software company. I think that's really important. So behaving like a software company where it's probably a naughty word these days, but being agile about things and basically being as fast and dirty as possible.
Move fast and break things. The original Facebook motto.
Yeah, the doing things without spending a whole heap of money trying them. And that's really what's made Karma a success. We iterated and we saw what it would take to be able to produce that much protein from one site to service that contract. That's like company death on a plate. So we reimagined, we looked at our ingredients, we realized what we're actually playing with is a reasonably lightweight protein. When I say lightweight, it's a protein that can easily denature. So we're going to be fairly delicate with how we treat it and what the extrusion process is and all the rest of it. And we realized that less is more. We figured out a cooking method to create a product with the resources that we've got right now that we can sell today. That's what we've done. Again, the vision is that we want to make this global, and taking on the additional debt, for instance, to service the major contract that we got, even though it would be $60 million a year, would have sent us broke.
James, I'd like to know who you'd like to hear on the show next.
Me personally, I'd like to hear someone in the alternative meat space. That would be really interesting. I would definitely listen to that. It's a hot topic. Not a lot of people know, but the meat we consume contributes almost as much to the planet's warming as transportation does. So people in this space are doing things for the right reasons.
You'll be pleased to know that between now and when this episode's coming out, there is going to be an episode on alternative meat.
Great. And then after that, the third one after this, I'd like to hear somebody in the health space. Or even you could put them together, somebody in the alternative meat space and then somebody in the health space. Because that's a really important point that a lot of people miss, how that alternative protein behaves in the gut. I definitely listen to that. That'd be really cool.
Thank you very much for being on the show today, James. It's been incredible having you on.
Thank you for having me.
The show today was produced by the in-house audio team at Hospopreneurs, led by Jake Olver. Voiceovers were by Angus Brennan. To learn more, head to hospopreneurs.com.